Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in for today's video. Today I want to talk about 5 tips that have helped me improve as a fisherman. Now, for those of you that don't really watch me a whole lot, I mainly do saltwater fishing, but I do some not inshore, but freshwater fishing for crappies. So I think any of these 5 that I'm going to give you will apply to about everybody, in one way or another. Let me know down below, because I'm sure there's stuff I'm going to leave out, only doing 5. Let me know in the comments down below of if I missed something that has helped y'all catch fish and catch more fish on the regular. So I'm going to give you the first 3. The 4th one I think is extremely important. I wish I would have been better at it. I do okay now. I still need to improve in this area, but I do think number 4 is the most important tip that I can give anybody in any form of fishing. So let's get into it. So my number 1 that I'm going to start with is time on task. And basically what that means is just putting your time in on the water. So it's kind of like anything in life. I don't care what you do, what hobby, job, relationship, your faith, anything like that. Like, none of us are good starting out at anything that we do in life. Or it's very, very unusual. You'll hear about some sports athletes and stuff like that, oh, well, from the time LeBron picked up a basketball, he was amazing or whatever. But, for us normal folks, it's not like that. And especially with fishing. Fishing, there's so much to learn with it. So just time on task, putting in the days, putting in the efforts. I know there was many days when I was first starting to fish, I was so frustrated, and I would go home and just be like, man, I need to find a different hobby, or I need to figure something else out, because like this just is not clicking for me, especially growing up in Ohio, not really fishing a whole lot, and then moving here to North Carolina and trying to saltwater fish. I just had no clue, and it just took me time to kind of start piecing things together and building those blocks. I still got a long way to build on them, but from where I started at, I've been kayak fishing now for 3 years, I believe it is. And from what I improved to of that day 1 of kayak fishing to now, time on task has definitely helped me with that. So the next one will be the 90-10 rule. And I'm not for sure how much this will apply to freshwater. I would assume it's pretty much the same compared to saltwater. But basically what the 90-10 rule is 90% of your feeding fish are in 10% of the water. So if you can find that 10% of the water where there's fish, obviously you're going to be catching the crap out of them. Now that goes back to rule number 1 of time on task and finding where those fish are at. But why are they there? So, that was a big one for me, because at least at the coast, there's so much water. And how do you start narrowing it down to finding that, 10% of the water to where the fish are at and are feeding? Because it can be very overwhelming. I know that was for me, man. It was like, wow, there's thousands and thousands of, shoreline or miles of shorelines, and where do you start at and what do you do? And it's going back to number 1 of the time on task and finding that 90-10. And when you find it, why are they there? So number 3 that I will give you will be trying different techniques, helps if I can talk, and different baits. So as you're out fishing and stuff's not biting, that doesn't mean that there's not fish where you are at. You just might be having the wrong presentation. You might be using, like for me, I use a lot of soft plastics. I might be using the wrong size or the wrong color, whatever it might be for that day, because what worked today might not work tomorrow, and so on. So don't be afraid to try things, especially as you're learning. You'll watch guys like, whoever on YouTube of like, oh, well, so-and-so caught redfish on this lure, so that must work. I'm only going to use that. Well, that applied for that guy that day in his area. and might not ever apply to where you're fishing at. And that was hard for me to learn, was that of, you know, hearing and getting advice from different people. Well, yeah, that might work, but does it work for that day and that situation that you're currently fishing in? So, you know, as we're going on, this is number 3. We're building those blocks leading up to number 4 that I feel is the most important. So whenever you're done with your trip for the day, documenting your trip, keeping a journal, keeping a calendar, whatever, however you want to do it. Our phones are pretty amazing now that you can keep all this information on your phone if you want to. But the more in detail you can get of your trip will help out more. So like today's whatever, July 9th, I got on the water 6:30 this morning. Water temperature started at this. This was the tide. This is the area that I'm fishing in. And as my day goes on and I catch a fish, so like now, let's say I hook up a redfish. I'd be like, okay, it's 7:30 in the morning. I was in this spot on this tide. This is the water temperature. This is the lure that I used. And now as you start building that journal up, it's so easy to revert back to for the next years, and learning their patterns is everything. That do they kind of have very similar patterns? So I wish I would have been better at that from the very beginning. I still do it a little bit more so through this YouTube journey and that type of stuff. But I personally do need to get to where I have a physical paper, or however I decide I want to do it. That way next year when I come out, I can be more successful faster. So I can be, okay, well, it's March 10th, the water temperature's at this. Where was they at when the water temperature was this on this tide? What bait was I using? And that will give me a great reference point of where to start my day, because I'm sure a lot of you are like me. I work a full-time job. My time on the water is very limited. And so you want to maximize everything you can to become successful. So, like I said, I personally think the journal is probably the best and biggest tip I can give y'all. And even for you bass guys, your freshwater crappie fishermen, same deal. You're going to learn what their patterns are. And the longer that you put in the time on task, trying different techniques, finding that 90-10 rule, and you can document all of that, your success rate should go through the roof of being able to learn their patterns a whole lot faster. Now, number 5, it's kind of I don't even want to say generic one, but I'll try to think of a good way to phrase it, is learning from people. With what our society has become as far as like the internet, with YouTube, whether that be different forms of social media pages, that type of stuff is a great starting point. Especially like me, when I moved here, I didn't know crap about fishing. I'd done a little bit when I was in Ohio, but I never called it fishing. I was drowning worms and catching a buzz is what I was doing up there. It was in no way, shape, or form fishing. So YouTube was a massive reference point for me. There's so many great teachers online. Hopefully I can help you guys in some of this stuff too. But YouTube is a great resource. If you know people in your community that fish, just having conversations with them, not asking for spots and stuff like that, but hey man, what have you been catching? Oh, cool, you've been catching Spanish? What did you catch your Spanish on? Oh, you redfish are in? Sweet. What bait are you using? What lures are you using? Nobody's really going to give you their honey hole spots, but most of us, we kind of like to brag a little bit, man. And it's, oh yeah, I was out today and man, I was on a massive, redfish bite. Well, what was you using? Well, I was just throwing soft plastics. You know, I might not tell you exactly what lure I'm throwing, but, you know, I'll tell you, I'm using soft plastics. I'm using mud minnows. I'm using live shrimp, something like that. You know, so most people will be very helpful in that scenario. Another good one is bait and tackle shops. You know, those people in those shops tend to talk to their clientele that walk in of, hey, what are you fishing for today? How'd you do? If I go in today and then I go back to Dutchman's Creek and Angie tomorrow, she's seen me today, Angie's gonna be like, hey, did you have any luck yesterday? What'd you catch? She knows what I bought that day and everything. So they're not afraid to pass that information along because it's bringing customers into their shops. So people at the bait and tackle shops can be another great resource for you. And even social media, you know, charter captains are really good ones to look at. I'm sure I'll piss a few of you off by saying this, but part of your business is you have to catch fish. And with our society and what social media is, you almost have to post what you're catching on your trips to draw clientele into you. So I know for me, I follow a ton of charter captains all up and down the whole Atlantic coast. Like, I don't even necessarily just have it for around Oak Island here. I have it for all of North Carolina, all of South Carolina. I think I have some in Virginia, just so like I know where these captains are at and I can start seeing where the migration's happening, more so spring and fall time of what's running, you know, to prepare for summer or to prepare for winter. And so that kind of gives me an idea like, okay, well, you know, the trout are starting to move in, the redfish are starting to move in. Now I get a better idea of when I plan my day of going out and being like, okay, well, you know, Frank up in Wilmington has posted that he's been catching some redfish. All right, today I'm going to go out and that's going to be my main target. Might have to swerve while I'm on the water, but at least I know that gives me a really good starting spot. Is honestly just social medias, but people in general, whether that's YouTube, whether that's social media, that can be the bait and tackle shops, that will give you really good ideas of where to start at and how to kind of plan your trips for those days of what's biting and what they're catching them on. All right, bonus tip for y'all. This will apply to anyone that's an inshore fisherman, your bass fisherman, you know, mainly where you're casting and throwing lure type stuff, is just that, improving your casting. Casting accuracy, whether that be distance, side to side, or anything like that, will help tremendously. Number one, especially if you're sight fishing for any form of fish. I don't think bass fishermen really sight fish. I might be wrong in that. I don't bass fish, but I know for us inshore guys, you know, we'll sight fish reds, some trout, you know, stuff like that. So you want to make sure you are as accurate as what you can be. And I know for me in the beginning, my accuracy was horrible. So I'd be snagged up in the grass. I'd be snagged up on the docks. And any time that you're doing that, you're wasting time not fishing. So your success rate on that automatically goes down. I've done a video about how to improve casting distance and accuracy. So I'll put a link for that down in the description. And I'll put a card up top here to where you can just hit that and go to it. But casting accuracy mainly just kind of saves time, but it also, if you're sight fishing, is a major part of it. So practice it. Back to time on task of just honing your skills of something as simple as that will help your success rate go up. Well, hopefully these tips will help you all become better fishermen, fisherwomen, whatever you are. Like I said, they're not the end all be all. And if I've missed anything or you guys have better stuff, leave it down in the comments down below. We can all help each other grow on this stuff, especially for me still being fairly new at all this. I need all the help and the advice that I can. But hopefully these 5 have helped you. Well, I guess 6 if you include the last one. And as always, make sure if you want any hats, I got the Saltwater Buffalo logo on them. I carry 5 colors in them. Email me at saltwaterbuffalo121@gmail.com. And until the next one, remember, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.